Hey folks, this is Nal, and today we are going to cover the basics of calculating your character DPS in Genshin Impact. Before we get started, I'm a new content creator, so I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on the video if you like it, thumbs down if you think it's useless, drop a comment down below, and most importantly, drop me a subscription. I'd really appreciate it. All right, so what are we going to cover today? We're going to go over this formula. This formula is what we're going to break down how you calculate DPS in Genshin Impact. DPS is your attack times your motion value per second times your crit multiplier times your damage multiplier. And we're going to go over how you get each of those numbers, and we're going to build together to come up with the DPS for my Diluc so you can see that the numbers match what we calculate. So if that sounds good, stick around. We're going to get right into it. Okay, so to start things off here, let's go on into the character sheet, take a look. Now you can see my Diluc has 1883 attacks. So the first thing we need to understand is how we come up with that attack number. So let's open up the details here. Take a look. Right now you can see that my Diluc has 821 base attack plus 1062 green attack. So let's first talk about what types of attack there are. There are three types of attack. Base attack, which you can get from your character and the weapon they have equipped. Flat attack, which is the flat attack numbers that you might find on the feather artifact or in some of your substats. And then attack percent multipliers. These multipliers get added together and turn into what you see as the overall attack stat. So for my Diluc, we're going to calculate using this formula. The total attack is equal to the base attack plus the base attack times the attack percent multiplier times the flat attack. And so for my Diluc, we can go in and we can see Diluc has a base attack at level 80 of 311, plus he has a weapon equipped with 510 base attack. That's going to give us the 821 base attack that we saw on the sheet. So then we need to calculate flat attack. So we're going to go into his artifacts, and the main one you can see here is on the feather. There's 311 on the feather. And if we go over here, we can also find that I've got 39 flat attack on this, and that's all the flat attack I have. So that's this 350 number. Then we need to add the attack percentages. So I've got 46.6% on the hourglass, plus I've got the 15.2% that I'm getting from the substat on the feather. And then I've got 25% bonus from the pyro resonance that I've got right now because Bennett is in the party, and that's going to give us the 86.8% attack. So you can see here, total attack is 821 plus 821 times 86.8% plus 350, which equals the 1883 attack that we saw on Diluc's sheet. So, step one, we got his attack number. We understand how that attack number is calculated. The next thing we need to understand is motion value per second. So first off, let's understand what motion value or damage multiplier is. The damage multipliers are what the abilities actually will do. So let's just take a look at Diluc's normal attack here. This 153%, that is a motion value, and that value gets multiplied by the attack stat to get the base damage of an attack. So the first hit will be 153% times the attack stat that we looked at earlier. So what is motion value per second? Well, if we're trying to get the DPS, we need to understand not just the motion value of the actual abilities, but how long those abilities take. So what you do is you get into frame counting. Now, I'm not going to go over frame counting here today. It's a topic for another time. And personally, I absolutely hate doing frame counting. But fortunately, there are people out there who do some frame counting, and they put that information into Google Docs, and I've linked a couple of those down in the description where you can go look up frame counts for some of your units if you want to calculate DPS for yourself. But the formula here to understand motion value per second is really simple. It's the total motion value of a combo divided by the number of frames that combo takes, the animation frames in the game, and multiplied by 60. That's for the 60 frames per second. So you get that's how you get the motion value or the damage multiplier. Those terms are used interchangeably per second. So that gives you another piece of the puzzle. Motion value per second multiplied by attack. Now you're starting to get towards DPS. So where do we go from here? Well, we need to talk about crit, and we need to talk about why crit is so valuable. So crit is incredibly valuable because it creates yet another multiplier. And you can see my Diluc has just about 71% crit rate and 166.5% crit damage. So we're going to use this formula that I've got up on the screen now to understand what is an expected multiplier for your crits. So what is an expected multiplier? So it is a multiplier that you'll include in your damage formula based on how many of your hits are expected to be crits. And it will give you, what do I expect my average hit to get as a multiplier? Because you're not going to crit 100% of the time. So you can see you take 1 minus the crit rate plus the crit rate times 1 plus the crit damage. It's a little bit weird. And because this formula is a little bit obnoxious, I've gone ahead and created a reference table, and I've got that link down in the description. You can take a look at that reference table, look up your crit rate, look up your crit damage, and you can get the expected multiplier out of that table. Much easier than trying to remember this formula off the top of your head. Just take a look down in the description, and you can look that up right in a table. So for Diluc, we're gonna go ahead and do the math just so you can see how it works. Again, we could look at the actual doc that I've pre-created, the numbers match up there. So Diluc has a crit rate of 70.9%, crit damage of 166.5. So to get our multiplier, we do the 1 minus, it's 0.709, right? 70.9%, plus the 70.9% times 1 plus the 166.5 is crit damage, 218%. That means on average, my attacks are going to get multiplied by 2.18. Why? Because I'm going to crit so often that the crit damage multiplier is going to be applied almost 71% of the time. And so you get to, that's going to give me 218% damage. So this is why crit is so incredibly valuable. It just creates a multiplier that takes your damage and enhances it by a really significant amount. And we'll go over in a future video how crit rate and crit damage work together. And you've probably heard a little bit about a 1-to-2 ratio. We'll talk in the future about why the 1-to-2 ratio makes sense. Again, reference table for these values in the description. So let's move on. The last piece of the puzzle is going to be the elemental damage bonus that you get. And so here you can see that Diluc has a 61.6% pyro damage bonus, and Diluc is going to be doing pyro damage the vast majority of the time. And when we're trying to calculate his DPS potential, we're going to assume that he's doing pyro damage. So again, the reason you see that this is such a valuable thing is it is another multiplier, is another thing that you multiply your actual output by. To get it, you're going to take 1 and you're going to add all the percentage damage boosts. So here we've got a few things. We've got the 61.6% on the sheet, which comes 46% from the cup, 15% from the 2-piece of the Crimson Witch of the Flame set. And when you add those things together, the damage bonus is 1 plus the 46.6% plus the 15%, 161.6%. So now that we understand how all those things work together, and I'll pause there for a moment. Yes, I know that the 4-piece of the Crimson Witch will add on to his damage, but for simplicity's sake, we're not going to factor in the 4-piece today just because of the way it works. It makes the calculations a lot more difficult. And this is really a guide on how to calculate your basic rough DPS. So we've got all the pieces of the puzzle now. Let's bring it together. We've got Diluc's attack, 1883. We've got his motion value per second, 225.4. We've got my crit multiplier. We've got the 218% from the crit multiplier, and we've got the 161.6% damage multiplier. And so we can calculate that my Diluc, before using his 4-piece from Crimson Witch of the Flames, is going to have 14,870 DPS. So let's take a moment and talk about the things that we didn't actually cover today, other things that factor into DPS, right? I already mentioned the Crimson Witch of the Flames, which has a 4-piece that will ramp up the damage multiplier. All that's really going to do is increase those numbers, but again, calculating it's weird because of the way it applies. We also have Elemental Mastery. Elemental Mastery works completely different. Since we're not taking any kind of reactions into account here, we're leaving that off for today. We also haven't included things like weapon damage effects, like you might find in the Prototype Archaic. We're going to cover that in a future video. It's pretty straightforward to add, but right now we're really just focused on the character themselves and something that is repeatable across anything we're doing with that character. Finally, we haven't talked today about the stat that I think may be the most undervalued stat in all of Genshin Impact, and that is energy recharge. And we are going to have a whole future video devoted to why I think energy recharge might be the most underrated stat in Genshin Impact. So there you have it, folks. Calculating your DPS. It's a good way you can get a sense of what characters are going to accomplish. Again, I've got some links down in the description for you to check out. Once again, I am a new content creator. Would love you to hit a like and a subscribe on this video if it was useful to you. Until the next one, I'll see you next time.